Naked Shamanism. Welcome to With Insights Radio. I'm your host, Iggy Garcia. I will take you on a journey across the universe through shamanism, metaphysical, and holistic. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show. All right, everybody. Welcome to With Insights Radio. This is Iggy Garcia Live. I want to welcome everybody to the show tonight. I hope you got about a good hour to sit here with me and with my guest. We're going to have Tania the Herbalist. She's going to be with us and she's going to be sharing her story with us. And so let me make sure I get all my there we go. Okay, so we're going to start off here with a little ceremony before the show starts here. We're going to kind of bring in the ancestor energy, kind of give thanks to everything and everyone who came before us. It's kind of, we start every show this way, so. Okay, light a candle here. Light candle to our ancestors, giving thanks to those who came before us, who trailblazed the path for us in order for us to be where we're at. There's a lot of work that was made to get us to this point in time and to be the warriors that we are and to be the peacemakers that we are and to follow our path, follow our dreams. We give thanks to our ancestors, my mom and my dad and my grandma, grandpa, and those who are up there, wherever they are in the West door, sitting together. Oh.
Amen.
Of course, we've got a little sage just to kind of move the energy here a little bit, kind of get myself grounded, get everything going. Very good. Feels good. So welcome to my show. I'm glad that you took some time to be able to be here with us. So we're going to go right into it, guys. We're going to share. We're going to talk. We're going to bring Tania on here, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about her life, her story, where she started, how she started, and just kind of, I'm always interested when my guests come on the show to share a little backstory, who they are, what got them on this path for healing, because this is a healing path. This is a very sacred path that you do. So this is not just some random thing, 9 to 5. This is something that you're very committed to, something that's very deep in your heart and your soul. So I'm going to give you the floor and just kind of share a little bit about yourself to us here.
Thank you, Iggy. I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm known as Tania the Herbalist, and essentially I got into the, plant medicine, realm when it came to trying to help my mom. When it came to, and don't mind the echo, you guys, I'm kind of hiding out in the basement right now for my son, but it came to my mom, who nearly succumbed to the pharma industry. She had a very rare disease and condition, and she was on a lot of medication, and she was pretty much bedridden and lost all sense of coherency. She couldn't have a conversation with her anymore. Pretty much she was left to die. And I get my strength and my willpower and my stubbornness and my resilience. I get that all from her. So when you see someone in that position at such a young age, take such a downturn and almost be, bedridden, I couldn't accept that. And that spiraled me downhill as well. And I had a total breakdown. Which I later realized was, an awakening, because it was through that breakdown that I started to just, took some time off work, went by nature, tried to ground myself and meditate and find myself and find out what I had to do. And then that's when I kind of had that aha moment and said that there must be another way. And I guess spending so much time in nature had nature speak to me and tell me that there's healing in plants. And so I started by just buying my first book on medicinal herbs. And essentially my mom said, use me as your guinea pig. And that's what we did. And the more I learned about it, the more I was obsessed with learning about it to see how much healing power is actually in these plants. And so I did that with my mom. And now, though she still has her sickness, she's off of her narcotics, which the doctor said she would never be. She's still in pain, but she's coherent. She can have conversations. She laughs again. She, goes out. She's living again. And
Awesome.
that was the first really, ultimate moment where I realized that for me, pharma wasn't the way to go. And obviously having struggles of my own with anxiety and all these different things where they were trying to shove medication on me and things like that, I used this natural healing for myself as well, and was able to overcome, the anxiety and the stress and, endometriosis and some other things that I was dealing with too. So
Hmm.
that's how my journey started. And then you kind of just, the rest became history, where the more I learned, the more I wanted to share that knowledge with everybody else.
That's awesome. And you're also a coach too. I noticed on your website that you coach people how to do. Actually, you coached me a little bit when I got your material and just to learn. And so it's you never stop learning.
That's exactly it. So I do coach from a number of different things, everything from, getting you on your holistic journey, how to overcome anxiety, so many different things, empowerment, really, how to find your confidence, how to find that clarity, how to find your purpose.
Hmm.
That's one of the questions I get asked so often is like, how did you find your purpose? And many don't recognize that it takes, as soon as you're asking that, there's different ways that you could do that to figure it out. And then once you kind of find that purpose, how to hold yourself accountable, how to set these goals. Because same thing, a lot of people ask, well, how do you find the time? You're a mom, you're a wife, you have a child,
Hmm.
you have a business, like all these different things. And you find the time, even if it's 15 minutes a day, one day, things like that. So I coach along how to create that life that they want to have, and then finding the strength and the confidence to actually be who they're meant to be without the outside noise.
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of messages out there that are kind of been pushed aside. I think a lot of people would like to do what you and I do. I mean, different platforms, of course, but I know there's a lot of people chomping, going, "Oh, I want to learn how to do that. I don't have the confidence." And
Right.
when I started, I just did it. I just jumped on, wrong or right, it didn't matter. I just started,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes that's all it takes, just a little push, a little nudge.
And sometimes just people have to be kind of handheld. And that's where I notice the coaching is, because I get asked that often. And I could tell someone a word of advice, but a lot of people, when it comes to coaching, is you need that step-by-step process. So when I work with someone for 3 months, for example, that's my most popular program, is you work together for 3 months. Well, I'm like, holding your hand, walking you through the whole process so that I can work with you on that progress and, give you worksheets and templates and all these
Hmm.
different things so that you're able to hold yourself accountable and work through that. Because when you're consistently doing that for 3 months, you definitely build enough momentum to create that life that you want and to keep consistent at it moving forward.
Awesome. I have a question for you about codependency in herbalist medicine or plant medicine and stuff, or interdependency. You can attack whichever one you want first. I'm kind of curious because there's in shamanism we have a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies and stuff, and some people start to microdose after they do the ayahuasca and do journeying. And the spiritual aspect is to find yourself in that journey. So, do you ever run into those situations with the work you do?
That's not necessarily something that I tap into,
Hmm.
but everyone heals differently. I would say that when it comes to plant medicine, it's a complement. It's not just a one, a fix, like a one-time fix-all kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, Plant medicine isn't it's a holistic approach, right? When I say I'm
Right.
a holistic coach, an empowerment coach, it's a whole. If you have anxiety, for example, which is the biggest thing that I coach on, because I myself suffered with it for so long, it's not just herbs that are going to help it. However, there's herbs that help support the nervous system for
Hmm.
long-term relief of building resilience when the stressful things happen. But it's also your practices, spiritual practices are so important. Whatever that spiritual practice is, for me, it's faith, for me, it's God. But whatever that is, that's a huge thing too, because a lot of the times the anxiety is because you're lacking faith in a spiritual fulfillment, as well as, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? How's your connection with other people? How is your connection with life? And all of those kind of come into the holistic approach of healing yourself. And I myself, it takes a big step for myself from where I grew up with having a very, toxic, family, not really toxic, but my parents, for example, had a very toxic relationship, and you learn those habits. So then you make those same toxic choices. And then, you grow up in an area, for example, myself, that wasn't the most ideal. So you learned a lot of bad behaviors, and you just kind of carried that with you into your future. So it's through these holistic approaches that you're able to conquer that and overcome it, recognizing that it all made you who you are now. But it's not a one thing is going to fix everything. It's a multitude of things. So like I said, spirituality, what you're ingesting and digesting, what you're thinking, who you're seeing, what you're talking to, who you're choosing to be around,
True.
all of these different things play such an important role in your healing journey.
Yeah, I find that to be true too, because I know sometimes people just want a quick fix. They want an answer. They want something they can just spray in their mouth and that's it. And then
That's the thing. I get asked often where people are like, okay, I need something for just this. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
I can recommend you an herb for sure, but I'm sure there's a little bit more than that. But not just that, there's some herbs that can help things. You know what I mean? If you've got, bloating or things like that, eczema, there's just some herbs that can help that. But there's also long-term fixes. And, it's not a pill. You're not going to take it and after your first cup of tea or your first capsule, you're going to feel better.
Right.
These are things that over as low as 2 weeks up until 3 months or later, do you really start to get the long-term effects? The same way I usually say it took months or sometimes years for that ailment or that condition to show up. The same way, if you want it to actually be done naturally, it's going to take time to, overcome that and get to that point, but longer lasting results.
Right. Even like with the work I do, sometimes people come in, they just like, they don't know what to expect. And sometimes they're just like, phew. You open up this door where they've never seen before. And sometimes it's the last place, it's the last hope too. And I'm sure you run into people where, this is the final place that they've gone everywhere.
Yeah. Well, there's some places in the world where it's the, plant medicine is the first place that they go to, but in the Western world where I am, it is unfortunately the last resort. So I do get a lot of people coming to me because they have tried everything. They have seen all the doctors, they've taken all the pills, they've done surgeries and removed body parts and all these different things. And then they're saying, it's not working, I need something more. And I'll say it again, most of the ailments that happen with us is because our bodies are out of balance, whether it's all mind, body, and soul, it's all connected. And you can't just fix one without fixing the others.
And then, plus the culture we live in and the societies we live in and the things that we created, these caves and these templates and this world that we're now, it's just in rampant chaos because we're 9 to 5, go to work, eat, sick, blah, blah, blah. You never just go, 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 go. And we've kind of forgotten the old ways. The old ways, like you said, first medicine was plant medicine. And, plant medicine is all around us if you look and but a lot of people don't have the time or don't take the time. So right now we're in a situation where we're going through a lot of change very rapidly, very quickly, very fast. And people are just want a quick fix again. They want the answer ingested to them, given to them. And I see a lot of problems with that.
Right.
I see a lot of problems with that. And the future could be really uncomfortable.
Well, if people understood where the conventional medical system even came from, they would start to go down the rabbit hole and recognize who's behind it. When you see who's behind it and the money that's behind it, you start to recognize that, the pharma industry is $1 trillion industry. You can't patent what comes from nature, which makes sense why, something, for example, for one of my sleep blends that I take, it's called valerian. Valerian's a very powerful herb for the nervous system. It's almost considered like a sedative because you can drink it and almost want to fall asleep within the hour. And that's the active ingredient in something like Valium. So you would think, why not, tell everybody about Valium and give them a chance to try Valium because so many people, valerian instead of Valium.
Right.
But you cannot make money off of that. And if you can't make money off of that, well, they got to find another way. So let's create it into a pill, let's manufacture it that way in a lab. And now we can patent it. And now we can make our money off of it.
It's just reverse engineering of something that's in nature.
Right.
They take
taking that active ingredient and nature, there's not nearly as many side effects. You can take your chances with almost every plant. Obviously not every plant. There's some of them that we shouldn't, but once you understand a little bit more and communicate with the plants, you start to recognize, which ones you can and cannot ingest.
Absolutely. Well, in plant medicine too, we are in connection with plant medicine. So
100%.
And it talks to us too. We communicate with us. When we ingest it, it does what it's supposed to do. But so here, a lot of people forget the old ways is just we did it like this. Why do you eat that? Why do you do that? Because first of all, we took a lot of ancestors to figure out that you won't eat that plant, or you
They
were
did
going
the
to eat this
trial
one.
and errors
Yeah.
for us.
So
Yes.
well, Tony's gone, but regardless, that's where we're kind of disconnected. I believe that we're not really connected to how much food is in our yard. The dandelions, all the different plants that
Yes.
grow,
Yes.
all the things, all the medicinal things that are right in front of us. And we totally just
Well, like
have it.
people take it as weeds. I love that you brought up dandelions because I advocate for those. Those are the most precious plants that everybody's got around them, and they treat it like weeds and they get upset when it's on their lawn. And let me just say that the more dandelions you have on your soil, that means that it's trying so hard to neutralize the soils and the
Mhm.
minerals in the soil, which means it's doing what nature does and is trying to repair itself. So I'm that person that leaves the dandelions, leave them. I like them. I'm not going to put anything on them and
Yeah.
spend my great precious time just pulling those things out of my lawn. No. And I teach my son to pick them out. You can eat them. You can eat it from the root, the stem, the flowers, the leaves, all of it. It's all edible.
Yeah,
It's a very
absolutely.
powerful plant. And most people, if they looked around them in their backyard, they won't even know most of the plants that are just in their backyard that's got so many healing properties. Like I'm in Ottawa, Canada, and I'll go in my backyard and there's nettles and there's dandelions and there's burdock and all of these
Burdock.
things that
Mhm.
if people understood the healing power, that as soon as you step outside, you're already on plant medicine, essentially.
Yeah, basically. I mean, we living on a big plant medicine, which is cool. And the animals know. The animals know what
Right.
to eat. They ingest that. And it's funny. I want to tell you a little story real quick because I kind of went on a journey for self-realization, connection. I went on this fast for 40 days to have no meat, to not ingest any meat, just go strictly plant medicine. Of course, I treat it with a little bit of eggs and cheese and stuff, but I wanted to see what my body would do, like what would happen, because I'm a little bit heavy guy. I'm a stocky, short Peruvian guy, and so we have a tendency to get a little heavier if we're not careful what we eat. And the beginning was really difficult, and then little by little I could see. And then Easter came. I didn't want to eat any ham. I was looking at the table. I was like, I don't want that. This is me. But I got really triggered by the documentaries I watched. I was researching. I was studying, and it's just crazy to think, how this industry, like not even the pharmaceutical, the cattle industry, the fish industry, all these industries have so much control over this world, and how they so corrupt it is, and how it manipulates, and how it feeds us
Well, it's
this
the
stuff.
food industry. It is.
Yes.
Like, I'm not against meat. I know a lot of people assume that I'm 100% plant-based. I'm not. I'm 80%, maybe
Hmm.
sometimes 90% plant-based.
Hmm.
Um, but it's all in where you choose to get that meat. I
Hmm.
only do local. I'm very particular. And if I can't find it local and I make sure that it's not, well taken care of, then I just choose to not eat it. But what you do find in the grocery stores, like you're talking about, where it's auctioned meat and they're full of antibiotics and they're this and they're that, and they're, over medicating them and giving them steroids just to be able to get more milk or this and that.
Yeah.
That's inhumane. That's against it. And I'm totally with you on that one because that's not something that you should be eating. If they're living in distress and you're eating that meat, you're feeding your body that distress and the chemicals that animal had to deal with, 100%. And that's where I can understand why people definitely go vegan and plant-based.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I do think that it is in very, very minimal moderation that meat is important in a sense that there's some minerals in properly sourced meat. For example, like I have my hunting license.
Hmm.
There's nothing hurting you from going and hunting your own meat if you do it properly.
Hmm.
Um, and making sure that there's certain minerals and vitamins that are in meat that is very hard to substitute in 100% plants. You can survive off of plants 100%, but
Hmm.
this is just my personal opinion is I'm about 80 to 90% plant-based.
And you made a really good point, because I had this conversation with one of my friends this weekend about the distressed meat and the hormones and all the things, and then we wonder why human beings are distressed, have anxiety, have certain things. And you are what you eat. That's that old
It
saying,
is. It's
you are
true.
what you eat.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so, and I didn't, just living through life, sometimes I didn't think about that. I'm going, that's a true statement, she said. I was like, that's very valid. Really never clicked until that moment when we were talking and having that conversation. And I was just
Okay,
like,
good. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to is, is it 100% bad? No, but it depends where you're getting it. I don't support it from the grocery store. I would never buy it from a grocery store. You don't know what's in it. You don't know what they're
no,
putting in and what you're putting in your body. You have people that are like, "Oh, I don't believe in vaccines and this and that, whatever," but you're going to go and eat meat that's injected with all of those, and now you're feeding your body that. It's
interesting.
very similar. But it's all about where it comes from. And if you know where the farm is and how they treat their animals and how they're raised and how they're killed, essentially, like all of that plays an important role because it pretty much should be like an instant kill. They should not be traumatized. They should have a really, really great life. But yeah, with that being said, I mean, it's totally up to someone, but a lot of people seem to get the image that I'm 100% plant-based and I'm not.
Yeah, I wasn't assuming. I was just curious. I was
No,
just
no,
sharing
I'm
my
just more for the audience, I
sure,
guess.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. But I was curious though. Maybe you have this answer. I haven't really found it. I've been kind of looking for it. So now that we're in this COVID-19 situation, are they injecting animals with the vaccine?
Good question. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, considering there was several times they came out with articles saying, the animals might be carriers of the
Hmm.
COVID. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to do that because apparently there's a lot of farms that are injecting the animals. They're just probably going to throw them in as a regular one. But for sure, I have no idea.
Yeah, I
And I
was.
would not trust it, especially if there's like, if you think about it, if there's any type of a nanobot in this thing,
Hmm.
and now they cut that meat, that nanobot's not going to just disappear and now it
Hmm.
ingests into your body. Now you've got that nanobots inside of you. Like that's the possibility. So I wouldn't trust it.
So tell me a little bit about these nanobots. I've heard this, but I haven't really quite grasped the severity of it or what it does or what really happens when it goes into your body.
Um, well, I think like doctors Carrie Madej, there's a lot of doctors, Dr. Stephen Malthouse, Dr. Tenpenny, Dr. Tapper. There's a lot of them that talk about this in particular. And essentially, a nanobot is a very, very tiny nanoparticle
Hmm.
that recently I just shared a video on my Instagram. I'm not sure if you saw that about it actually being in the PCR test.
Oh,
Um,
really? I didn't know that.
so, and I always was questioning the PCR test. That's why I wouldn't go near it. But essentially, what they're saying, what Dr. Kermide especially talked about really well, and I have a YouTube video on it.
Hmm.
Surprisingly, it's still on YouTube, but it talks about how it can just think about it as like a very, 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 very tiny computer. It's a technology.
Okay.
And this technology can be attached to a cloud. And they say that it's, there's people that argue and say that it doesn't have that ability, doesn't have the ability to change your DNA, doesn't have your ability to change, your genome or anything in your body. But okay, I'm going to listen to the experts that are being silenced, and I'm going to listen to the experts that aren't biased or paid for, not
Hmm.
mainstream, doctors, media doctors, I call them. These are doctors that have, are on the risk of losing their lives and their jobs just to speak the truth and doing God's work. But they talk that it is absolutely has the ability to change your DNA. And that means that if you're connected to something like this, well, then who's to say that whatever is controlling this, form of a technology, who's to say what they can be communicating to that's communicating it to your body?
Interesting.
And Dr. Kamade even went to the extent of saying that essentially, if you have this nanotechnology inside of you, well, now you're technically patentable because you're no longer 100% human. Now you could be, to some extreme level, borderline robot, which they can control you, which means it's patentable. So there's like a whole array. I know
Yeah,
it
that's
seems
kind
a
of
little bit
interesting.
it's overwhelming, but essentially a nanobot is a very, very tiny piece of technology that they say is going into your body to get your body to create the proteins that it needs to be able to fight this virus.
Hmm.
Well, okay, but then what? Do you just think it disappears out of the body?
Hmm.
So that's where the biggest concern is what is in this nano, particle and what could it do to the body?
Yeah, it almost sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? It's like those movies
Yeah,
you watch where they
well,
just go on your body.
yeah, I mean, even Rocco Galati was doing a live one time with Sasha Stone. And I mean, I always take everything with a grain of salt. I don't watch it and, say it's 100%
Hmm.
because, everyone has their opinions, but at least the more you watch, the more you kind of gather your own conclusions. But they specifically talked how these can have the ability to even like remove your empathy,
Really?
your compassion and your empathy. So, given this, you're eventually going to have zombies, and not zombies in what you see in like things like Call of Duty or Walking Dead
Right,
and things
right.
like that,
Okay.
but zombies in a sense that they're going to seem soulless. They're going to seem like they're losing empathy and they don't have the same care for people. And to be honest with you, I think
Hmm.
we're already seeing that. If you
Yeah.
look, just say the PCR test did have it. One
Okay.
of my good girlfriends, she's actually a co-founder of the Freedom Organization with me. She just did a video that I shared on my Instagram, that she took home 2 PCR tests and she tore it apart. She scraped the end of the test off and put it on a bowl and tried to figure out what's going on. You could see the little tiny lights light up, and just very very tiny. It's obviously like they're looking at it like they're it's magnified in to be able to see these, because you wouldn't be able to see it with just the eye. And at first she thought it was a reflection, and just to make sure they shut off the lights, and sure enough it looked like it was little fireflies.
Wow.
And where would that, if it's just a swab, if it's just a swab, why would that be in there? Why
Yeah.
would you need that in there? And so let's just say this is a nanoparticle, because why else would it light if it didn't have some kind of an electric field in there, right?
Hmm. Sure.
Well, then let's just say that this is a nanoparticle. People are worried about it being in the vaccines, but there's a chance that it's actually in that PCR tests. Well, let's just say it isn't the PCR test. That might explain why people are becoming so much less empathetic with other people now as the testing keeps ramping up and ramping up, because I see it more than ever as someone who, shops without a mask and, says that I will not get the vaccine. I say no and things like that. They become more aggressive. They're not empathetic. They say, oh,
Hmm.
you're selfish or this or that, but they seem to be forgetting, well, what about all the people that could be dying from some of these measures? How come
Yeah.
you don't care about them? And I find that they've become so less in touch with their human nature. And over time and more tests and all of this happening is probably going to diminish their natural instincts and that human function deep inside of their souls, because of these increased nanoparticles inside of them.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember years ago when my son was in school, like it was his first grade, and the teacher came to us and said, uh, I want to talk to you about your son. And, basically it was about putting him on ADD medicine. So that's like the first interaction of zombieism that I encountered with my own personal family. And I told my wife, I said, no, we can't do this. And she agreed with me. We put him on holistic based type, different type of stuff to help him. And it helped him. And he was very grateful. He told us later on in life, he says, I'm glad that you took me off that stuff, because, we had a kid who was concentrating working, but we didn't have our kid. It was another person.
Good for you,
So,
Iggy, because I was that ADD child. They wanted to put me on medication. My mom refused. Thankfully, she refused, because now, exactly like you said, now that I'm older, I'm thankful that she refused it.
mhm,
Because now as an adult, I know I seem very calm and things like that in my
mhm,
videos, but I'm a very hyper person in the sense that I I multitask and I have to do so many things at once, and that's how I function. I'm
mhm.
a highly functional person in that sense, but it works for me. I usually have 2, sometimes 3 laptops that I'm working between, in a day, and just working on different things. And while I'm waiting for this to load, I'm turning over and things like
Sure.
that. But just because I'm not able to sit down in a classroom for hours a day without wanting to do something does not make you ADD. It just means that that's the type of personality you are. We don't all have the same personalities. And now as an adult, I see how that works for me. You know what I mean? And so I'm happy that you chose to not go that route. And I'm hoping that there's a lot more parents that recognize that your child not being able to sit down for hours a day without being all fidgety and want to get up is a normal child. There's nothing wrong with them. But the school system, wants you to be medicated, because the school system is run by the same broken system as the pharma industry. It's all operated by the same people, which is why they
Yeah.
need licenses and things like that, because anything that has a governing party like that, that governing party is being controlled.
Mhm.
Um, but they make you believe that there's something wrong with your child. Here's a medication. You need a medication for that. And then they make them like zombies. That's what it turns them into. They just sit there and they kind of lose themselves because they're on a medication that's almost sedating them while they're still awake.
Right. And it's conformity. They want them to conform to be like everybody else, and the teacher
You're not
does.
conforming.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's like, so we cut that out. So now we're kind of going into this new realm where there's a lot of conformity going on.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening and watching, we're going to get into some deep topics here, and you can choose to listen or not listen, but it's very important that we have different perspectives and different views how other people see the world and not just yourself or myself, because it's very important. We're in a pandemic situation. We have all these things that are happening right now. We have masks. We have people who want the vaccine and stuff. You have to comply and stuff. Here in Ohio, where I live in Ohio, you have to wear a mask when you go into public places. Not necessarily is outside unless you choose to. Everything's just choice now. They make you feel like it's choice. Let's put it this
Right.
way. And for the whole year, I was also fearful. I'll be honest. I'll be one of those first people to say I was afraid because I wasn't sure. You don't know what's going on. Do you trust what's going on? But jokingly, I would tell everybody, we're all going to die. It doesn't matter. So it's like, why are you guys giving into all this? And I was one of those people. And then I would get shut down and banged up and people would write me. But then it stopped because you have to, I hate to say it, but not necessarily pick a side, but you have to stand firm in what you believe.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to ask you what you believe, to what you see, how you perceive the world, how you see things happening.
Well, the first thing I want to say is if there was a real pandemic and a real plague, I don't think there would be a debate. It would be obvious. And there's a lot of people that still say, well, you don't see the medical system and you don't see it's overridden and things like that, or overwhelmed. But as someone like myself, who's got a decent following of people who are trying to share their stories with me, that's what kept me grounded in knowing that I was doing something right by believing that there's something way beyond this pandemic, is because of people's real stories. I heard about way too many suicides, or people saying that their kids, as young as 7 and 8 don't have a purpose to live anymore and things like that. And that's what fuels me. I don't care whether or not there's a virus. Do I think that there's a virus? Maybe. Do I think that it's killing more people than the flu did? I don't. And the reason why I say that is because another video that I also shared is this was an experiment that was run. And I question all of the audience. Call your local funeral homes, call at least 5 of them and ask them, in 2020, did you have an influx of deaths and funerals in comparison to the prior year, or is it relatively in line? And see what they say. Because when that experiment was done, every single one of them said in line. There was no influx of deaths. Well, how is that possible? And then they obviously use the argument that lockdowns and things like that worked. Okay, but if it did, then why are we, for example, here in Ottawa, in Ontario, why are we going into a third lockdown if it worked the first time? It doesn't make any sense. However, you've got deaths from suicide and overdoses skyrocketing. And this is where I come in the sense that where's that empathy and compassion, is because even if the hospitals were overwhelmed, where is the compassion for those that are actually losing their livelihoods and committing suicide and domestic abuse and, drug overdoses and all of these things, when their livelihoods are being taken away from them? Is it fair to go and protect a certain vulnerable population from a virus while you've got a perfectly healthy generation of people that are now facing a whole other, depth of death because of these measures? Why is one more important than the other? And that's what I always say. And it's not about arguing who's right or what's wrong. That's what I look at. And I have people that share their stories all the time. I have a pharmacist even that messaged me one time and saying, like, thank you for your message. I've never prescribed so many antidepressants in my life. And these are the things that we have to pay attention to, is because it might seem okay now, but what's going to happen to the future generation of us and our kids? Are we even going to have grandkids at the way that this is going? To teach kids, to wear a mask and things like that, where you had someone like Dr. Fauci, who's not even, to me, a doctor, is saying at the very beginning, saying that masks won't do anything. But then this is based on like 15 to 20 years of studies. And the scientist, Denis Rancourt, talked about it. But then shortly after, based on who knows who told him what, started to say, no, we need to wear a mask. And then we need to wear more than one mask. And everyone is following without asking questions. And that's the problem, is no one is asking questions anymore. They're following blindly. And what I'm saying, you don't have to take 100%, or what Iggy's saying, you don't have to take 100%, or what anyone is saying, you don't have to take 100%, but ask questions and come to your own conclusion. And look at some of the doctors and the scientists that are in the experts. And I did an interview with Knut Witkowski, who's like a top epidemiologist, who talks about how the way they're trying to stop the virus is actually more dangerous than just letting it run its course for real herd immunity. So these measures are going to have far worse detrimental effects than any virus would have. They're allowing it to mutate if there is a virus. They're allowing it to mutate so that it becomes more dangerous, which is what? Is that part of the agenda? I don't know. But the point is this is not a regular pandemic. Funeral homes are not overwhelmed. They did not have any more influx of deaths compared to the prior year. And here in Ontario, for example, we went into a third lockdown, and they say that our top doctor is recommending to going into another stay-at-home order because of 421 people in ICU. Now, let me just say this. There's 421 people in ICU with COVID. And this is in the province of Ontario, and there's 384 hospitals. You do the math. That's less than 1.5 person per hospital. That's not a pandemic.
Right. I see.
And so when you think about that, and I always question, oh, the government cares about our health. Okay. So if they did, how come they haven't, mandated diet or exercise? Why don't they mandate that? Why don't they, eliminate things like alcohol or smoking cigarettes and things like that? And then a lot of the people will answer, oh, because it's your choice. You don't choose to get the virus. Well, let me just tell you that you can choose to have a weaker immune system, which could make you more susceptible to the virus. So should that be mandated? Because I can tell you, for someone like myself who chooses to live a healthier lifestyle, I'm not scared of a virus. Even if I caught it, I'd know I'd overcome it. And kind of to what you said, if for whatever reason I succumb to a virus, well, it's my time to go, because every single one of us are going to go at some point. But the measures cannot be worse than the disease itself. And that's the part that I fight so hard against, in saying that. And then also when it comes to the injections and these vaccines, I'm sorry, this is nothing that's been studied for long term. You don't come up with something in less than a year and say, here you go, take it. We don't know what the long-term effects are, but just, go ahead and be our guinea pig and we'll see how that works out for you, right? Cigarettes were once upon a time advertised by doctors, and people fell for that. And then they shortly figured out that, oh no, it causes cancer. We got to remove that. This is going to be the same thing. Look, there's already an article in Canada Health. Canada Health shared an article about the graphene, toxic chemical that has been in those blue masks, the disposable masks. What are they called?
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
I don't remember what kind of masks they are, but that they're in them now, and there's toxic chemical, hundreds of thousands of them. What? You mean to tell me hundreds of thousands of kids and people have been wearing masks with toxic chemicals in them and they say that it could vary the effects, and they don't know how big or bad. So where there's a risk, there has to be a choice, and that includes a vaccine. Don't mandate anything on us. If you want to get it, by all means, go ahead. But I feel bad because you're choosing to be a guinea pig, and because I'm an empathetic and compassionate person, I don't want to see you go through that. I don't want to see family members go through that because they're choosing to not do research themselves and blindly trusting people to tell them what to think or do.
And the research is kind of like, it's not a cure. And I think a lot of people going in with it, well, I'm cured because I do drum circles here. And then I've had a lot of people say, oh, I had the vaccine, and they're all on top of you. And I'm like,
it's like a placebo. They think that they figured it all out. But what's ironic is you go and you see, okay, so someone with the vaccine still has to wear a mask and still has to social distance and still has to do all these things. Oh yeah, because we need herd immunity. We need everybody vaccinated for it to work. That's not how herd immunity works. And it's very unfortunate to see that they've done it. And I say this, they've done a really good job of, indoctrinating people through textbooks and through TV and radio and low frequency music and things like that to really dumb them down. And I feel bad saying that, but essentially it's dumbing them down to a point that they can no longer think for themselves. They can't critically think. They don't even, because if I see someone and I ask them a couple of questions, it's like they go, I didn't think about that. And I was like, how do you not think about just asking some questions to yourself? Like, there's some people that are like, oh, I'd rather, get a side effect from the vaccine than die of the virus. That's how much they've convinced you. Most people don't even know that they have the virus. That's where they made up this term asymptomatic.
Yes.
But yet these asymptomatic people are having severe reactions from the virus. I'll take my chances with the virus. And even then, like I said, where there's a risk, there has to be a choice. So you have to be able to make your own choice and respect that, and not become, what's happening is I find people are becoming very upset at the fact that others have not fallen into the fear that they've fallen into. and they don't understand how people are not falling into the fear. And what I don't understand is how after over a year, you still don't start to ask some questions about what's happening. Once again, if there was a true pandemic and a true plague, there would be no debate. It would be obvious.
Right.
You wouldn't have to hear from the news saying cases, cases, cases. It'd be very obvious and you'd see deaths happening. You'd be talking to people regularly to be hearing about the COVID deaths that are happening.
Yeah, I had my uncle passed away from COVID, but he had other ailments too that didn't help him along the path. But the interesting thing is, I have another teacher who told me, he goes, the reason he wears masks is because during the Civil War, they were having a lot of deaths because of the germs and stuff, and cutting off people's legs, and they started putting masks around their faces, which is a whole different scenario, of course. And I found that really interesting, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense too. But then I hear Bill Nye trying to explain, how you know what I'm talking about, the little bubbles, the little particles going in there, and it's kind of.
Well, it's funny because I did an interview, same thing as on my YouTube channel, by scientist Denis Rancourt. And he's not just any scientist. He was the professor of physics. He's got a background in all types of science, as well. So it's not just, a lot of people will say, oh, but he's a professor of physics. Well, that's just what he taught, but it's not what he was just educated in. And he's a scientific researcher, but he is such a well-versed scientific researcher. He's had over 40 published articles in very well-known articles, maybe even more. But the point is he was such a well-read scientific researcher that he used to teach the students at the graduate levels how to properly read scientific data. So when you have a scientist in this realm who's telling you, this is weird because this is what the data shows, but they're not telling you that, well, it's going to make you question.
Sure.
And these are the scientists that I'm saying, just open up to it. Don't just say, no, it's against my narrative and I don't want to look into it. Just look into it, ask these questions, because I can't tell you, Iggy, and it makes me so proud, how many people have messaged me to say, I thought you were crazy at first, but you did make me start to ask questions.
Sure.
And when I started to look for those answers myself, now I understand what you're talking about. And you just have to go in with an open mind. You think we want to be in this civil war of, maskers, anti-maskers, vaxxers, anti-vaxxers. None of us want to. We all just want to get back to living a life.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, it's a lot easier to sit there and follow the rules and do everything that they're telling you to do, and much, much harder to do something like we're doing, or especially like myself, who's very publicly speaking about how I feel, because there's a lot of hate and backlash that comes with it. But that's fine. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it to try to wake up that 1 or 2 or 3 people that have messaged me and said, you made my mind start to ask some questions. And that's why I'm doing that, is because I can go to sleep with a calm and peaceful mind, knowing that I'm just trying to help whatever people I can to recognize what's going on and to be able to actually make a real informed decision. If you look at both sides and you go ahead with your decision, that's an informed decision, whatever decision you go with.
Right.
But do not let someone tell you what the facts are when you haven't looked at any of the facts or the research yourself.
And peer pressure is huge right now. I've run into people who've had situations where peer pressure has forced them to take the vaccine, and they've had adverse reactions to it, knowing better that they shouldn't have taken it.
And that's only now. Dr. Tenpenny talks a lot about how there's multiple doctors, actually, even Dolores Cahill, PhD, but they talk about how it's not just short term. It's the next 6 to 12 months when your body comes in contact with the wild virus and your body goes into a cytokine storm and shuts down because it goes into an overdrive attacking itself. That's when it's going to kind of be scary. And that's my prediction, is that's when the real pandemic is going to come out, and they're going to start to blame it on the people that haven't gotten the vaccine, but it's actually not. It's the actual regular reaction that happened in all of the animal studies that they've done for a decade. And the bodies went into a cytokine storm. 100% of the animals in the animal testings, bodies went into a cytokine storm. That's going to be the real pandemic. It has nothing to do with the vaccine or like people not getting the vaccine. It has everything to do with the people that did get it.
Now in Canada, I noticed that they have some, I see you with your lanyard and your little certificate to not wear your mask. Now, is that something that was people worked for and fought for?
No, this is just something that I actually created.
Okay.
It's just the bylaw. And a lot of
Okay.
people think of, what is this? All it is it's the bylaw. It states how I have a mask exemption, and it shows the human rights code, exactly what it says in the human rights code with the telephone number. And on the back of it is an exact printout of the mask mandate bylaw that states that, there's different reasons for the mask exemption and no proof is required. And this is the exact section, subsection 2, subsection 1 shows that no proof is required. It's just the bylaw. So for me, most of the time I go shopping, I actually don't even take it.
Mm-hmm.
I just take it with me as a way to promote people that aren't 100% comfortable. And there's a lot of people that don't necessarily know the bylaw on the back of their hand the same way that I do. So this kind of empowers them to know that information and feel more, inclined to use that when it comes to shopping. Anyone can make that. Wherever you are, you want to find your bylaw, you want to find out the exact wording, and you can create it into a little thing. And I put it into a lanyard because looks a little bit more legit versus a piece of paper flying around. And people love it. People don't have issues. People are messaging me all the time saying, I finally went shopping maskless. It was a great experience. People were nice to me, things like that. Yeah, there's some stores that might give you a harder time, but find the stores that don't give you a hard time, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Because I know you've had guests on there where they've gone in and tried to go without a mask, and people just freak out. It's just like, it's really scary to watch sometimes how people react and respond.
A lot of the times, though, I question things. Like there was a recent video that people started to share to me, that they were arrested and stuff like that. And my first gut was, and it was in my city in Ottawa, and my first gut was, something is off about this video, because I've been shopping maskless for a year and I've never had that happen. And sure enough, upon digging, I found out that there was some things that were actually probably missing and taken out of context in that video, in a sense that, apparently, so my good friend actually called that exact location and asked about what happened. And the manager was like, no, we honor exemptions here. That couple was a little bit more aggressive and things like that. There was issues that happened beforehand. So we asked them to leave. When they wouldn't leave is when we called the cops, and that's when they were, being charged for trespassing. It had nothing to just do with the mask exemption. However, it made it seem like that. And to me, it was upsetting, because I'm trying to push people to get the confidence to go and shop maskless. You don't go and you be disrespectful. You go smile and you be nice, and you shop like a regular person the way you normally would. You don't go causing a problem. If the store gives you a problem, you can be firm in stating that you know your rights and things like that. But if they continue to give you a problem, record it, file a human rights complaint. You could do a small claims court. But if not, then just simply leave the store, find somewhere else. Okay, this happened at a Loblaws. Loblaws doesn't give you a hard time. Actually, just today, I was at Metro, and Metro on the intercom mentioned to wear a mask and to social distance and to keep in mind that mask exemptions apply. They said it on the intercom, right? So find the store that's okay with that and respects it, and go and support them. But I can tell you, like I said, after a year of shopping maskless, they don't usually give you a hard time like that unless you're specifically going into a store that doesn't respect it, such as Costco.
Right. I've noticed here in Columbus how, especially outside, people are not wearing their masks like they used to. There's a big shift happening here in Ohio that I'm noticing.
There's a shift happening for sure.
Big shift. And I think just out of respect for others, people would just wear a mask, when they go into a store. But when you're outside, you can kind of tell the people who really kind of are compliant, they just kind of wear it. I mean, that's me. I'm projecting here, but that's just my observation, because they kind of walk away from you when you don't have your mask on.
I see that. Yeah.
And so then you see the other people who kind of, it's kind of getting kind of weird here for me. It's getting kind of weird because I have some friends who got vaccinated. Now they're in the vaccine club. Oh, we're in the club where, it's like,
just be careful with that shedding, because that's the thing. That's what they talk about. Dr. Coleman just released a video on that, talking about the shedding could be dangerous.
Yeah.
And I know they say that shedding only happens from the live virus, but in this case, it's very different, because your body's you're telling your body to create, a virus, an antibody type of thing for the virus, that it's like projected to happen, which we don't even know what that shedding could look like. So it's scary when you think about it, but then again, it's their choice. And, just like we're going to make our choices. But when it comes to the mask, I do agree. There's a lot of, like here, it's either two ways. Some people are becoming more lenient with the mask and don't want to wear it, while I see more and more people outside taking a walk wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like people that are perfectly young and healthy wearing a mask while you're outside. And I cannot believe that they actually think that walking outside and breathing fresh air is more dangerous than wearing a mask. It's beyond me to think that, you know, they've been molded to such a point and brainwashed to such a point to actually think that breathing fresh air, the most important thing that we need to actually survive, is dangerous. They actually start to think that the number one thing that's important for us, like people walking in a forest. I've gone to a forest and people walking with a mask. I'm like, you do realize that the trees are breathing out the oxygen that you need, and instead you're choosing to breathe in your own carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And these people don't recognize the long-term detrimental effects of this.
Yeah, I can't wear them very long. Like I can't. It's just like my body's just like freaking out. Dude, what are we
Well,
doing?
that's the thing is your body knows it starts producing a lot more red blood cells than it should be, which long term could cause sicknesses. I feel especially bad for the people that have to wear it at work all day. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I remember in the old days when we were younger, we kind of, hate to say it, but make fun of people who would wear masks walking down the street, and then here we are, like 10 years, 20 years later, we have to wear them. So it's kind of interesting. I watched one of your interviews with David Icke, which I thought was really fascinating. I love that guy. He's got he knows a lot of stuff,
Yep.
but he doesn't believe. Maybe I'm misquoting him. Maybe you can correct me. But it almost seemed like he doesn't believe that the virus even exists.
So this is how he explains it, and this is a concept that I can agree with. And so here's the thing: there are no more deaths than there were the prior year without a pandemic.
Mhm.
So is there a virus? I think that they probably relabeled flu as something else because all of a sudden here, for example, flu disappeared
Yes,
98%.
I saw
You
that.
know what I mean? But then there's
Hmm.
still the same amount of deaths. What I do think that they did is they probably amplified the deaths, some deaths at a quicker rate. So essentially,
Hmm.
this is another thing. I'm going to get back to your question. Denis
Okay.
Rancourt talks about all-cause mortality. And let's just say that every year it's like a cycle between the winter months and things like that. Well, what happened with COVID is it took a spike like this, but there was no more deaths. He was just saying that it's the measures of like lockdowns, because most of the deaths obviously happened in the elderly homes and things like that.
Hmm.
The lockdowns, the isolation, the fear, and everything sped up deaths that would have normally happened over several months into like a month or two. So they
Okay.
sped up some of the deaths, which is actually criminal. Now, to answer your question about David Icke, what he talks about, and I completely agree with, is if there was a real pandemic and a virus, how would they control that? They can't. And the only way that they can control what they do with the virus is by manufacturing one that doesn't exist, by pushing out media and propaganda on that,
Hmm.
and to get people to fear something that doesn't even exist. And that's how he explains it, that there essentially is none, but they will create one, for example, one that could be happening from the vaccine and all these things. If there's no more influx of deaths from the funeral homes, which is confirmed, and if there's no more deaths in a year, which has been confirmed compared to the prior year without a pandemic, well, then is there a virus? And not just that, they still have not isolated it. They had, like Sunnybrook Hospital and things like that, university, sorry, were saying that, oh yeah, it was isolated, but then they actually found out that when they really asked them for all the evidence on how they isolated it, they couldn't come up with it. So,
Yeah.
people will go and say, yes, it has been isolated, but once again, using what's told to them versus researching it themselves and saying, no, it actually isn't. So what are you testing for if it hasn't been isolated? Because coronavirus, there's so many different variations of it.
Hmm.
I could have had a common cold that's going to be a variation of the coronavirus, which means it's a test could go ahead and pick up any genetic material. It doesn't actually pick up whether or not you have it actively right now or whatever it is. But that's it. So he says that the virus does not exist because if it did exist, how would you be able to control it? And to an extent, I think he's right.
Yeah. Now, plant medicines can counteract some of the virus effects and stuff if taken in right.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first, I'd recommend immunity boosting ones, right? Hibiscus, rosehip, echinacea. There's so many ones like
And this is where the feed freezes.
nettles. They're actually
And this is where Big Pharma doesn't want you to listen. So, Tanya, if you can hear me, you're frozen. As soon as we went right into the herbal medicines and things that can help people get better. So when she pops back in, we'll let her continue that part of the story. But I hope you're enjoying the show, just trying to get a different perspective, a different view on how things are and how people are experiencing this and how other people are trying to help other ones just kind of see things differently and to feel the things differently. So it's interesting to see what just happened. That wasn't planned by any means. That is just something that played out. Maybe someone reported us to Facebook or whatever, but regardless. Oh, here she comes. She's coming back. You're back.
So sorry. I don't
Yeah,
know what happened.
no, as soon as you started, she was talking
See, they
about.
probably booted me off the call.
That's
I'm
exactly
telling
what I
you.
was telling my listeners. I was like, as soon as you start talking about the good stuff that could help us
That's
in a
what
natural way,
happens.
you went.
But
You
what was I saying?
were talking about hibiscus and the different things that you can take.
Yes. So when it comes to actually catching the virus, for example, things like mullein leaf is really great for releasing the mucus, build up in your chest. Things like elecampane is amazing, astragalus, ashwagandha. These are all really good immune boosting, but can also help with, releasing mucus and your whole system really. Marshmallow root, marshmallow leaf, like slippery elm, which is great because it helps with the dry throat after you've coughed for so long. It soothes the membranes.
Yeah.
So you could take all of these together, and these are things that are more agreeable with the body, and you can't overdose on it. You could take as much as you want. So
Right.
I'll throw in hibiscus in like a cold season into all of my teas, maybe echinacea as well. So if I want, and I you could throw them all together if you want to. If I've got a cough or things like that, for example, like I like my CBD and I like to smoke my CBD. If I've got a cough for whatever reason, well then, I'll drink some mullein, and by the next day or two, that cough is gone. There's a lot that you could do with plants, and I actually talk about it in my medicinal herb guide for beginners, where I try to simplify what the herbs are that you're getting, and what the benefits are in a term that's easy to understand, so that's not overwhelming with all the political grammar on that and the scientific grammar behind it, but just in a way that anybody can pick it up and read that and say, okay, these are some of the plants that I want to use. Everything from sleep to anxiety to immune boosting to lung and detox and all of that stuff.
I know I burn a lot of white sage because it really helps me. It's like really good.
Sage
really
is great. I have a pound of sage for sure.
Yeah.
I'll sometimes throw it in. I mean, there's obviously some things like sage, for example, I don't recommend for breastfeeding moms and things like that, but you don't have to worry about that. So.
No, I don't. Not in this lifetime. Maybe the next one. But let me ask you a question. Taking the supplements with these things in it, is it as effective, or do you recommend the actual plant dried, or however you? It's better to take than not.
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, supplements can help, right? If you can get it out of plants and food, it's ideal because your body absorbs it very differently.
Okay.
That is the best ideal, just supplementing, like having a poor diet, but then supplementing on, just taking supplements, your body doesn't absorb it the best. So you want to try and get it out of food. Like, for example, I have it on my link in my bio as well, where I talk about Purium. I buy that. It's a shake that I have every single morning, and there's one for kids. It's called Epigenius Kids, and it's foods. It's organic foods, and like you should see the ingredients because you're like, it's like a meal replacement essentially, but it's got all of the organic foods into a shake, and all you have to do is add water, and you could see all the vitamins and minerals that are in it. So your body absorbs it differently because it's food. It's naturally able to absorb it differently. If for whatever reason you can't always supplement in the food form, taking something like vitamin D in liquid form is crucial. The capsules are not nearly as effective as the liquid form. And then you also want to make sure that you're taking your vitamin K, because it helps you absorb that vitamin D, but not just that, magnesium. But magnesium topically is more effective and absorbs much better through the skin than it does same thing in a capsule, which magnesium helps your body absorb the vitamin D. Vitamin C, same thing. You can get it in so many foods, you know what I mean? Calcium, same thing. Calcium, you've got things like broccoli. There's so many foods with high calcium, way more than any dairy products and stuff like that,
Sure,
right?
sure.
There are some supplements that you could take, ideally in liquid form. But if you can get it out of foods and plants, that's ideal. You know, something like dandelion is so high in so many vitamins A, K, and things like that. Just think about it this way, even mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
If it's sitting in the sun, that photosynthesis is absorbing so much vitamin D, and then you're eating that.
Yes.
So all of the vitamin D that these plants and these mushrooms that are collecting, and you eat that, you're
Yeah.
absorbing all of those benefits. You can even put mushrooms on your window pane and let it sit in the sun and absorb the vitamin D and eat that, and you're going to get more vitamin D that way too.
That's pretty cool. Just made me hungry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that you took time to be here on the show with me tonight.
Having me.
And I've kind of watched you from afar, just kind of following your posts on Instagram, and I guess was really curious. And I said, I'm gonna take a chance and ask her if she want to be on. So that was a very big blessing. And I told everybody, yeah, I want to be interviewing this person because I got excited because I like to see the other perspective, the other side. Because sometimes I try to,
Asking those questions, and I appreciate that, Iggy, is people have to recognize you don't have to agree 100% to try and hear someone's perspective. You know, we can have differing opinions, but just taking everything with a grain of salt, right? You don't read one book and say, that's it, I'm running with everything that was said in this book. You take some things that you really digest, you listen to the speech, and you take things that you really digest. And this is how people create their own conclusions. And that's why it's important to get these different perspectives, to talk to different people, to ask different questions, and find that out, because that's the only way that we're all going to learn to work together. Not everybody has the same beliefs, and we shouldn't. That's what makes the world a beautiful, unique place. But it's about respecting that and understanding their perspective based on doing some research yourself. For me, like example, I understand if someone has a certain spiritual belief or things like that. I don't have to 100% believe in it, but I completely understand it. And I respect your decision the same way I expect you to respect mine. And that's really what we're seeing now with this COVID world, especially, is it's either you're on this side or you're that side, or you're against us or you're not.
right.
And that's the problem that I think that the media propaganda is putting on people, is because it's not about that. We are humans. We all have the same blood. We all have the same size grave. We all have the same creator, whatever you believe whoever you believe that creator is. And that's what we need to remember. And it's an important one. So I appreciate you, asking these questions and looking into it, is because, like you said, you started off in fear, and as time is going on, you're opening up to asking these questions. And that's important. It's important for people to recognize that, I was scared at the beginning, but for me, it was for the first 2 weeks. And after the first 2 weeks, I was like, there's something more than this. What's going on here? And I started to ask questions. And the more you ask questions, the more, like I said, you create your own conclusions, and then you understand people a lot more when you ask these questions and you find, different perspectives.
Absolutely. So I have to say, that's probably your closing statement there. I like it.
Much.
Awesome.
Well, thanks
Tania,
for having me.
Thank you for being on. You're most welcome.
Welcome.
And I hope you come back again and
for sure. Let me know.
Especially when we move on down the line, when we get into a better space as a whole collective, as a whole planet.
Sounds good. Thank you, Iggy.
So thank you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Bye.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Tania was with us tonight, sharing her story, sharing her medicine with us. And I think that's important. I think it's important to share where you're at, what you're feeling, what you're seeing. And I'm glad that I did interview her, because it gives me a different view of what she's doing. She's talking about helping those who are sometimes lost in the shuffle of all this chaos. So, and there's people asking her questions because she's also a leader in her community, as many of us are. And they need answers, they need questions. It's too easy to go along on the boat and just do what everybody else does and think that's okay. No, that's not okay for everybody. It's kind of like the story of the 3 people on the ship: yourself, a man, and a child. Who do you save at the sinking boat? And the question most logically would be, we save the child, right? Maybe the other person. So why don't we save ourselves? Why wasn't the answer you? Why won't you save yourself? Because we live in a martyrdom type society where being the martyr is so valued. to you're almost praised, almost like angelic Jesus type, like, where because you were the martyr. Oh, he's so good. No, sometimes you have to think about you. Think about what's important for you, what you need in order to succeed, in order to survive. This is about living, surviving, and helping others along the way. Now, that's a fictitious story, right? It doesn't really exist, this boat sinking, but it can feel like that for some people sometimes, that this ship is sinking. Who do I say? Who do I listen to? Where do I get my information from? This guy says this guy's lying. This guy says that this is misinformation. This guy says he's a fraud. This guy says, you're inundated. So you have to believe that your mind is going through a process right now, trying to figure out what the hell to do. What should I do? What can I do? Should I take the vaccine? Not take the vaccine? And like I told you, I'm not here to tell you what to do. You have to make that decision for yourself. All I can do is present you ideas and present you with guests who just see the world differently. That's all. If you get angry and triggered by what you heard today and what you saw, that's on you. That's not on me, because I believe what I believe. If you don't agree with what I believe in, that's okay. It doesn't mean we have to be enemies. It doesn't mean we have to hate each other. It doesn't mean that we have to go down this road that's unproductive, that's not good for the world, not good for us. The point is this: you have to do the research. You have to do what you think is best for you. Remember, this is your host. This is your body. This is your spirit. This is your soul. It doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to your wife. It doesn't belong to your significant other. It doesn't belong to your children. It belongs to you. And if you want it to be happy, you must do what centers you, what puts you in that Tao, what puts you in that yin and yang, what puts you in the it's good to be here, what puts you in irisikwi, matakuyasen, what is above is below. That's where you have to find the magic. What is good for Iggy Garcia or for this person or that person. For me to tell you what to do and to tell you this is the way it is would be an injustice to you. It would be wrong of me, because now I'm projecting onto you my belief systems and my thoughts and my emotions, my feelings, my collective thoughts of how I see the world. There are enough people telling you how the world is and how it should be, or how you should vote and how you should sleep, or how you should not go down this street or go up this street, or you should wear your seatbelt, not wear your seatbelt. There's enough of that right now. Now, we understand that some things will help us. Some things will put us in a place where we're a lot safer. This pandemic, this COVID-19, this coronavirus, which we don't call it corona anymore because we went to the COVID name. Is it real? Yeah, it's real. How real is it? It's as real as you want to make it. It's as real as you put it in here and in here, and whatever you're feeding into. Can it kill you? It could kill all of us in a single bound if it wanted to. Can some of us survive? Possibly. But here's the point. We all will die one day. One day we will return back to the earth and become the dust. Yes. The acceleration of that, no. There are many of you who could walk out the door and something can happen to you. You could die of a heart attack. You can get hit by a car, You could just die. Don't live in the fear. I guess this is what I'm trying to tell you. Don't be fearful. Just be cautious and just be understanding that, there are potentials and there are things that can happen to you. There are things that can manifest and work themselves in a certain situation. There's a lot of things that affect our body, not just COVID. Our diets affect our body. What we drink affects our body. What we smoke affects our body. The people around us affect our body and affect our mental mind. All right. So whatever you do, just know that we are very sensitive and very gentle and very fragile creatures. We are. Is as strong as we want to be or believe how strong we are. We as human beings, we are very fragile. And the only reason we ask questions is because we don't know. And we ask questions because we don't want to get it wrong. Because we don't want to be the person who caused the problem. We don't want to be that person who ends up being hurt or become ill, because we want to be informed. But you can only be informed so much. At some point, your mind process will decide what I need to do, where I need to be, how am I going to go, where am I going to go with this? And when that moment comes, just try to understand that that's the best decision you can make for yourself in that moment. That's the best place you could be right now. It doesn't mean that you're right or wrong. It just is. The only thing that I'm going to say is honor that other people may not agree with you. and may not be on board with you on what you want, what your decision is. Regardless if you take the vaccine or not take the vaccine, honor that people are where they need to be in that moment. It doesn't mean that they may change their mind later. It doesn't mean that maybe later things turn out better. We don't know, but to hurt one another because we believe something to be a certain way, that's not good for us as a collective, as a whole, as a world, as a country, as a species of people. We have enough hate and anger in the world. We have enough war. We have enough starving people in the world that we can't worry about these things. Sometimes we have to figure out ways to help each other versus trying to damn each other and punish each other for the ideas that we have. There are rich countries in this world that could feed all the people who are starving in the world. There are rich countries in the world that can bring fresh, clean water to lands that have no water. Our job is to teach these people how to fish, how to dig wells, how to garden, how to grow, how to create permanent, sustainable foundations for their lives, which has not happened. And that's why we see the destruction. That's why we see the separation in this world, because we've gotten away from being connected with Mother Earth. We've gotten disconnected with what it means to touch and eat something that grows in your ground. We are so processed in our ways of living. We go to the store, we shop, we buy meat, we cook it, we make it. We have no idea. We could probably care less. We're just hungry and we're going to eat it. But, the conversations that I've had with friends this weekend is very simple. Whatever you connect with, whatever you eat, whatever you ingest, it becomes part of you. It becomes a piece of you. It is inside of you. Whatever they ingested, you are ingesting. So be careful what you do with your body. Protect it, honor it. Honor this sacred temple of who we are. Because without honoring this temple, then it's hard to honor the spirit inside of us, because it's hard to house something inside something that's broken down. Yes, our journey is one day that we will return to the earth, but why not have a beautiful journey when we get to that destination, or our final breath that we take? Our final breath, because one day we will all take our final breath. And when we take our final breath, we don't want to have doubt or have remorse that we didn't live our lives the way we wanted to or should have lived them. So hopefully that tonight you were happy where you're at in this present moment. It can be better. If it's not, trust and believe that whatever decision you make, you just made that decision. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed our show tonight. I know it's a little different from the norm that we usually do, but it wasn't that bad, was it? It wasn't that painful. We didn't get into controversy. We just spoke. We had conversation and we shared. And so for those of you who enjoyed it, thank you. For those of you who are not sure, well, thank you. And those of you who disconnected from it, thank you as well. It means nothing. It just means that you just are where you need to be. And I respect that and honor that. So I wanted to share with you that Serenity Salt Spa will be having its open house on Friday and Saturday, 4 to 7 on Friday. I hope you can come. And then from 10 to 1 on Saturday. What is a Serenity Salt Spa? Well, you'll have to come check it out. It's a place where you come inside and you sit and you take aerosol salt into your body, onto your skin, into your nasal cavities, into your lungs, and it helps cleanse you, clean you, and prepare you, and helps you to better yourself. These are things that we have to look into, things that will help our spirit, help our temple. So I hope you come and support Sherry and I in this new adventure that we are in together this coming weekend, because we're excited and we're looking forward to see you. And with that, I want to say thank you for joining me tonight here on Dun 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 Iggy Garcia Live. It's good to be here. Matakuyasin, ho'oponopono. Take care of yourselves. What is above is below. Irisikwi, giving gratitude and thanks. And with that, I say aho, be well, take care, and I will see you guys soon.